in community. This fantastic bunch of budding software engineers, building, learning, creating, playing, remixing. This diverse group of people is the very Scratch assets we now so skillfully attempt to ascend.
Again,
The act of climbing, in the digital world or in the real world, has certain essential properties that give the game its flavour.
Hopefully you can hear me a lot
No
better.
amount of forward progress is
So
guaranteed.
this is where we got to last time.
When you start getting over it,
Since
you're
we
standing
fell
next
all
to a
the way
dead tree,
down, if you remember
which
our
blocks the
last
way to the
video.
entire rest of the game.
Successful,
prod
but we
and
figured
poke
out
at
how
it,
to do
exploring
this
the limits of your reach and strength, trying to find a way up.
And this.
When starting a new Scratch project, that initial blank slate is both refreshing and at times a little scary. Wouldn't it be great if we could travel forward in time and review our finished projects to see how well they turned out? I certainly wish we could.
Please help me get to 50
The real draw of coding,
subscribers.
what gives it that special zing, is the challenge of accomplishing something you've never done before.
Before
At this point, you don't want to fall into the trap of rushing into creating loads of content, designing all the levels, the player costumes, all the easier stuff that can be perfected later.
If not, then
No,
I
before
will get
all that,
angry.
you need to prod and poke that tree.
And
That is, understanding the coding difficulties you're expecting to face and try out any ideas to solve them. You may not be able to time travel, but at least this way you can get a good idea of how well your project is likely to go, and potentially save yourself a lot of time. This project began life a couple of months ago as 3 simple scripts: the player, hammer, and level. I spent no time on the art, just using ScratchGAT and a few rectangles drawn in the sprite editor. The scripts for the player quickly mocked up in a similar fashion to those I teach on my YouTube channel. With the hammer I had to improvise because I'd never done anything quite like that before, and boy did I prod and poke at those scripts. What I had imagined and the results I was achieving were hard to reconcile. The hammer and the player sprites would get stuck in the walls and ground, shake and jiggle and clip up to the top of the screen. Worst of all, when I tried the bread and butter action of lifting the player up upon the hammer, any tiny movement would throw the player into a crazy up and down motion as if bouncing upon a possessed pogo stick. Things don't always turn out as you want them to, and sometimes it's good to take a break. So, for the time being, I shelved the project, letting it slowly slip down the list of unshared projects, joining the countless multitude of unfinished, unseen projects that haunt the vast storage archives of MIT. Have you, as you've been playing this game, stopped to wonder how you can balance on a hammer that is held out to one side? It feels quite natural in game, but try it in the real world, and you'll not get your feet off the ground. No, this game is bending the rules of physics.
Okay, so somebody
Although I
said
was not actively
go
working on the
for
project,
the
the desire to code the game and solve the initial problems constantly played on my mind. Finally, I decided to give it another go. Research is a powerful tool. Don't just rely on what you think you know. YouTube can be a great resource for gameplay videos. Being able to pause and rewind the action is invaluable. Did you know that you can step through videos frame by frame using the angled bracket keys? My research helped confirm many thoughts I'd been having, and also uncovered some nuances around mouse movement that had really got me stumped. All this was food for my brain, and I was super fired up to bring it all to Scratch. And so, back in Scratch, I completely restructured the player and hammer scripts, bringing the scripts together in a single sprite. This allowed the movement of the 2 objects to be tracked together and to move dependent on each other. Of course, in coding, as in real life, you often have to compromise. It isn't reasonable to implement a full physics engine in Scratch, but often it's enough to create a good estimate of what the player is expecting.
We might actually finish it on episode 4.
1 plus 1
Half of what it took
is 2.
PewDiePie, but his
If this
videos
wasn't
were a
always
lot
the case,
longer.
if sometimes the answer was 3,
Also, this
then
is
we would be in
Scratch,
trouble.
so-
The addition operator is therefore referred to as deterministic. Similarly in Scratch, if your player sprite reports that it isn't touching the level, then you would expect, assuming the player is not
Final
moved
line.
relative to the level, that this would continue to be the case. As it turns out,
Alright,
the sensing
guys, I'm
block
gonna
in
end it
Scratch
here.
does not behave like this. It can be non-deterministic.
Yeah, I hope
This is down to how
you
Scratch
really
draws its
enjoyed that
sprites.
video.
Their
Bye.
size and shape
See
can
you in the
change
next
very